want to start by asking you to first tell us what it is that your center does.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I'm heading a center called CORE, Center for Research on Gender Equality, located at the Institute for Social Research in Oslo. And we do research on mainly on gender equality, but in an intersectional perspective, with particular emphasis on challenges in working life. And I mean, we do research on gender equality and career, gender segregated labor market, family and gender equality policy, and we're also interested in the working life of the future. We receive a core financing or a basic financing from the Ministry of Culture and Equality, but we also do commissioned research from the Research Council of Norway, different ministries and directorates, and also EU, European Union funded research of different kinds. So that's more or less us. Mm-hmm.
An amazing center that's doing really important work at all of these intersections, because isn't it so that for women we need to have a very intersectional approach? I would argue actually we need it for men as well.
Yeah.
But but if we think about women specifically, the interface between family, between work, between the society, all of these aspects matter. And we can't just assume that we understand it based on just using one lens. Yeah. Mari, in your articles, when writing about women's issues, there's a statement called gendered conditions and processes. And I think it's so important for people to understand what it is that we mean by that. Can you please explain, what does this mean?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about it as gender conditions and processes, we are thinking about how companies, working life, career trajectories, etc. are organized in ways that have gendered consequences. That typically opportunity structures, career tracks are organized with different consequences for men and women. And I think our research shows that in particular for mothers and fathers, that reward structures in companies is based on, or when it is based on individualized reward systems, individualized ways of organizing work, mothers with care responsibilities have less opportunities to work long hours, to travel, etc. But we also find that if companies reflect upon how they organize work, if work is more team organized, for example, that is also better for gender equality, because it's typically more easy to accommodate to different life situations, such as caring responsibility, and that this has to do with replaceability, because that's a typical situation, and more typical, I think, for women than for men, that they sometimes need to take a break and come back, for example, and then if they are irreplaceable, that creates a lot of difficulties. And what we also see is that men in business lives, they typically have partners with less ambitious careers than themselves, while women often have partners with more ambitious careers than themselves. So the consequence is that what is the best case situation for a woman to have a man with an equal ambitious career as themselves is the worst case situation for a man. So these kind of things in consequence leads to women have to struggle more in their careers than men often has to.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. The idea of replaceability, and also how organizations tend to address replaceability when it comes to, for instance, a topic like compulsory military service, which in many countries is targeted at men predominantly. And sometimes it requires for those men to be away from work for a period of time similar, perhaps to a short maternity break. And yet a company is likely to make alternative arrangements to let that individual go and do that duty. But when it comes to maternity breaks, there seems to be another set of requirements or thinking around that. And so the idea, you've given me a few ideas on next research with replaceability. I think that's a very interesting concept. Thank you for explaining that. I want to come to your paper that you wrote about quotas for women on boards in the Nordic countries. And in that paper, can you tell us why you think quotas have not had the desired ripple effects that they might have had, perhaps with another way of addressing gender equality on boards?
Yeah, our main finding in that article was that the Norwegian quota, who was implemented in 2008, did not have ripple effect to executive positions. But what we always start by saying is that they are actually working the quotas because they have quite strongly changed the gender composition of boards that are subject to these quotas, but it has not happened more in the companies that are subject to quotas for boards than in the companies that are not, when it comes to the executive positions. And the expectations were great that this stimuli, in a way, should make big changes, and also the idea was also that it would affect economic performance and so on. So what we argue is that it is exactly because of these gendered conditions and processes that is the reason why quotas doesn't have the ripple effect. But there's also, I mean, because of these gender conditions, there are to some extent actually fewer women around with the kind of competence and experience that are considered relevant for these executive positions, which has to do with the gendering of career structures. The competent women are to be found further down in the career ladder, and sometimes stuck there because there are incentive systems creating barriers for women, and especially for mothers. But also that they have, we also see that to some extent that women who has been in the career ladders for top business positions, they change to, for example, to the public sector, where the work-life balance is better accommodated with, and we see that there is gender balance in top positions in public authorities, in the ministries, but also in the publicly owned companies. There is much better gender composition in top positions. So what actually happens is that these big private companies are also losing talent with the way they organize work in ways that are hard women and especially mothers to succeed in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's exactly this point, the way we organize work, isn't it? The whole idea that a publicly traded company must work in a particular way to be competitive, and a lot of narratives about 7 days a week, 24 hours on, which we know is not good for any human being. I mean, you get burnout very, very quickly. But there seems to be this insistent race to make that the norm. And that is a way of organizing work. It is not necessarily the way to organize work.
I completely agree with that, yeah. And we also see that, I mean, there are some examples of companies that try out other ways of organizing work and with quite great success when it comes to gender equality, but also equality in a broader sense, yeah.
Yeah. So if gender parity is a moral imperative, why is it being couched as less than professional by professional women? Meaning that professional women might not really want to engage with gender equality.
I mean, what we actually have seen in Norway in later years is that the opinions among especially women in top positions, but also men in top positions, is that they today are much more in favor of quotas than they were some years ago. If not the quotas have ripple effects to executive position, it seems to have some kind of ripple effects when it comes to attitudes, much more positive attitudes. And for example, today there's an extension of the quotas for businesses in Norway, and today it's also supported by the biggest employers organization. But still, I mean, it's a quite tough or hard tool, quotas. So it counters very directly, I would say, the strong belief in merit selection. Which also is kind of a strong moral imperative in the business sector. So there is a tendency that gender equality is the aim that typically have to yield in competition with other goals. At the same time, I think these kind of tools may be very important in this time where there's big contestations against all these kind of diversity, equity, inclusion policies, and kind of dismantling of these policies. And then these kind of very strong tools may contribute for the debate in a positive way, I think, yeah.
And just thinking about the successes then of quotas, if we round it back to where we started, do you feel that societal systems and processes are changing in Nordic countries, or are they pretty much staying the same? Because it's always a chicken and egg type argument or question, but do you feel that there are societal changes, or is society pretty much staying stagnant in its interpretation of the role of women, yet there are these quotas sort of enforcing it in the business world?
It's a really a very interesting and good question, and very hard to answer. I think, when we look at gender pay gap, or when we look at the proportion or the male dominance in at the top of the business sector, it's easy to come to the conclusion that there's stagnation. But we may also missing the changes that are going on. For example, there's for quite a lot of years now, there's been a father's quota as a part of the parental leave, and the father's quota in the parental leave has been extended and normalized. So even among men in these careers in business life are taking leave when they get a child, and they I think there's among the younger men there are quite strong changes going on when it comes to how they think about their relation to the family and children and so on, and this bears some promises for bigger changes going on, I think. So at least that would be my view at the moment. But still, I mean, we're in a very turbulent world situation, and there's a lot of reasons to worry about backlashes. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And given this knowledge of, because I mean, quotas have been around for quite some time in Nordic countries. Given your knowledge and experience and the research that you've done, what would be your advice to policymakers elsewhere that want to start implementing quotas? What should they know or think about before implementing quotas?
I think maybe the most important message is that I think that quotas can be very helpful and contribute to change, but I think that one of the things that Norwegian authorities should have done more of was to combine quotas with other measures, other long-term policies, equality plans, how to work, active, systematic, targeted with equality within organizations, combined with what quotas do, which is more like fixing the numbers that for example, in boards. So I think it's necessary to think more holistic about how to make change happen, and not just wishing that this only tool in itself can spark off a lot of change.
Yeah. So sort of not banking, putting all your eggs in the quota basket, but building more of an ecosystem around that. Because otherwise it does become or it has the potential to become quite a carrot and stick type situation where it feels as though it's a stick. Can you perhaps just reflect, there was a time, certainly in Europe, when quota systems were implemented for with regards to women on boards, where companies actually started changing. They were deregistering and re-registering in other categories to avoid this. Is that still the case? Are you aware of any of that happening, or are they sort of accepting that this is part of what needs to happen and doing what needs to be done?
I think that later research has shown that there's been an exaggeration of the assertion that there was a lot of re-registrations. There was, I mean, for example, in Norway, the gender quota regulation for company boards was introduced about simultaneously with the financial crisis. So there was a lot of turbulence, so a lot of things happening simultaneously. So I don't think that re-registration has been or still are a big problem. But what is happening in Norway, and also the way a lot of other European countries have introduced quota measures for company boards. At the moment, it is extending the field of what companies that these regulations apply to in Norway, so that all big companies, not only the ones registered on the stock exchange, have to follow the quota regulations, and the main reason for that was that what we saw was that the quota regulations led to more than 40% women on company boards in the companies subject to the regulations, while very little happened in the other big companies. So the government said that we cannot let it stay like this. We have to do something with it, and actually, as already mentioned, the big employers organizations agreed with this, because actually I think they are also quite committed to more gender equality. I mean, we are in a situation today where there may be a lack of competent people for these jobs, so women are needed just as much as men for these top positions.
Yeah, and just thinking about utilizing your full talent pool instead of just fishing in half of the pond does make sense. Just about that, the rounding back to the idea of being qualified, and especially being qualified to serve on a board. Do you find, do you have examples in Nordic countries of strong mentorship programs for women on boards, or for boards themselves to include women? Because sometimes women are over mentored, but the board actually needs to accept the change and invite the change. So any information about the other mechanisms that have been utilized to give effect to the quotas?
Yeah, I think that this varies a lot across companies, but for example, the biggest employers organization, they although when it was introduced or implemented in 2008, they were principally against it, but still they introduced a program to qualify women for board positions, and these programs have been, I think, quite successful in getting more visibility to what are the relevant and competent women, and also contributing competence, knowledge about board work and so on. But still, I think that it is a main problem that there's been too less internal work in organizations to promote equality, and too much hope that the quota will fix the problem in itself.
Yes, a kind of it's not us, it's them, and so let's train them, the women, but not do some of our own deep work, because there are certain changes that happen on a board once women enter. This is the whole argument for greater diversity, because it helps the company at the end of the day. Mari, I want to thank you very, very much for joining me today. And to do this interview. I've learned a lot about the Nordic region, and especially, in a region that really, where quotas originated to a large extent within Europe and has been working with it for such a long time to understand the nuances around that. Thank you very, very much for joining me.
Thank you. Very inspiring, and I'm in fact quite curious about the situation in South Africa, but that will be to a later stage. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.